Hey, Shawn, great to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Excellent, excellent. So just right behind me here, there's some waves that I think you'd gladly get up on. So it's absolutely pristine here in Portugal.
Nice. I've always wanted to surf over there. I mean, I grew up surfing, and that's what brought me here to Costa Rica. So I'm a little jealous.
Excellent, excellent. We're going to talk a bit about where you're at physically and what you're doing with your own money. You know, Margaret reminded me just yesterday just how successful you've been in recent years buying, I guess, properties that aren't exactly at the higher end of the Costa Rica market, tarting them up and generating really strong yields from short-term rentals. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But first of all, where are you and why are you there? What brought you there and what keeps you there?
Got it. So I am in the town of Jacó Beach in Costa Rica on the Central Pacific Coast. If you were to fly into San Jose, the international airport there, we're about an hour and a half directly to the West Coast from there. And I came down here 18 years. Honestly, it was a surf trip that I came on. I wasn't planning on moving here. I was planning on moving to Hawaii, but what I found here was the beauty of Hawaii, but with much friendlier locals and a more affordable lifestyle. And so I was here for a 2-month trip, and I had a house in Los Angeles that happened to sell while I was here. And so I just moved my life back down here. And Jacó is, since it has the close proximity to San Jose, it has, I mean, you have all the amenities of the city, but you're on the beach. And Jacó is very international. And so we have folks from all over the world, which is great because I don't cook, nor does my wife. And so we have phenomenal restaurants. We have, I counted, over 100 with cuisine from all over the world. And we've got a fantastic expat community here. And I have 2 kids that are 8 and 11. So they're in international English speaking schools. And that's what really keeps us loving living here. We love the community and the friendly locals. And of course, it's the tropical lifestyle where it's warm all year, and we've grown accustomed to love that.
Very cool, very cool. Um, in a minute, I'd like us to talk a bit about kind of the before and after COVID, what's changed in Jacó in terms of the profile of people moving there and renting there. But before we jump to that, maybe if you could talk us through what you've been doing in terms of buying affordable properties, tarting them up, and renting them.
Absolutely. So in Jacó, we have condos that are 1 to 2 blocks off the beach, and I've been picking them up between about 70 and $100,000 each. And they do need a little bit of work at that price point, especially if you're finding something for 70, 80,000. Typically, it needs some work. And I'm going to put in about $20,000 on the top end, $30,000 into remodeling them into contemporary units. And what I do is I put them on Airbnb and VRBO. And what I've seen is I'm grossing about $20,000 to $22,000 per year, and then I have about $4,000 in expenses per unit. So that I'm netting $16,000 to $18,000 on each one of these units, which is a pretty darn good return. If I had $100,000 in, obviously I'm making a 16 to 18% return. Now there is a big caveat with that because I am doing my own management. So I am booking my own rentals on Airbnb and VRBO. Now I have plenty of clients and customers who are doing the same thing that don't live here. And so what they have to do is they have to hire a manager just to oversee their property. And so they'll still be booking their rentals on their own on Airbnb and VRBO or whatever other websites. I've had clients have success on booking.com, TripAdvisor, other sites that we can discuss later. But you really you have to be willing and able to book your own rentals and then just hire someone at about $150 a month to oversee your properties. The other situation is where you can hire a full-time manager, a full service manager who does everything for you, including booking the rentals. But these managers are going to take 25 to even up to 35% of the rental income, and then your return's not going to be nearly as good as what I'm making. So it does involve a little bit of work. I spend about an hour a week on it, so it's not a lot of work because I've learned to automate everything, and I'd be able to show you how I've been able to automate everything, and I can give you some of the documents and tips that I've learned.
Um, Very impressive, Shawn. I mean, even if you are losing 25% of that, I mean, you're still netting into double digits. And what do your LA friends say when you tell them I'm seeing gross yields of 22 to 24% and netting out at 16 to 18?
They all want a part of it. And honestly,
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are purchasing and doing the same thing. And I have clients who've done 3, 4, 5, 6 of these types of units. And it's even become the retirement plan of some folks where if you can make a little over 100 grand on 5 units, you could live pretty comfortably here.
Yeah, yeah. And so who are the renters?
So I'm renting on Airbnb and VRBO. That's just my bread and butter. And my renters tend to be North Americans. Occasionally I'll have a national Costa Rican book, but that only accounts for probably less than 5% of my business. Now, I see other people who are marketing to the national market and doing quite well. Especially if you have bigger units, because typically Costa Ricans travel in packs. They don't just travel as a couple. They've got their whole family or their cousin. And so if you've got larger residences, then you can market to Costa Ricans. Now, one thing that Jacó has for it is its proximity to the city, which I was just telling you. So it does have a very strong local market. Every weekend and holiday, we fill up with Costa Ricans. And so it's just never been a part of my marketing strategy because I'm doing over 70% occupancy just on Airbnb and VRBO, but I could tap into the local market if I wanted to. One thing to say is during COVID, the proximity to the city really saved Jacó and kept all of us renting our units. That was one time period where I actually did rent a lot of Costa Ricans. I had to drop my price by 30% during COVID when the borders were locked down, but the proximity to the city kept the local business thriving in Jacó.
Cool. And so in terms of the before and after COVID, have you seen changes in terms of a move to long-term rental demand? Have you seen changes in terms of the profile of renters for these types of units? And then more broadly, market-wide, what changes have you seen?
So in the rental market, I have seen people looking for longer stays, and they want to know that the internet connection is good and they've got a little workspace for them. And I would say we're getting a little bit of a younger demographic who can work anywhere from the world, and why not work in Costa Rica? But my rental numbers are probably the same as they were pre-COVID. So the market is definitely as good as it was before. Then as far as real estate goes, we trend to what's happening in North America. And so our purchase prices obviously came down during COVID. And then post-COVID, when our borders opened back up in November 2020, we saw a lot of folks that were looking to diversify overseas or find an escape hatch. And so our market has been fairly strong ever since November 2020. In recent months, we've started to feel just a little pullback. And that's just people are a little concerned about inflation and also the stock market. But with that said, we're still staying quite strong with folks who are looking to escape the US and Canada.
Well, surely with those types of yields, you have the solution for anyone who's concerned about inflation, for anyone who's concerned about protecting and growing. And Shawn, is there still availability of those types of condos? Can you help RETA members buy units like that today?
Yeah, there's not a huge selection, but there is some units still available where you could potentially do exactly what I'm doing.
And I presume, Shawn, to kind of jump on these deals, you need to move fast. It's more like a situation that, I might call you up, feel I trust you, and then you'd send me a text which is like, I just saw this condo at 70 grand, are you in or not? I'd imagine it's that type of purchasing dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I don't buy it myself, then I will definitely, it's definitely something that if it comes up, I can give you a call and say, look, you should really move on this quickly.
Great stuff. And then in terms of the rental market more broadly, are there any other kind of strong yield niches in Jacó? What about bigger homes that might be attracted to a family or a bigger group or a group of surfers?
Yeah, so in our area, there's a definite lack of 4 or 5 bedroom plus residences. You're getting into the higher dollar purchases at that point, but they rent incredibly well because of the high demand and low supply. And so there are anyone who has 5, 6, 7, even there's people who have like these 10 bedroom plus residences, and they're getting some really high returns. They're booking out to weddings, to corporate events, bachelor parties, and they're making a really good return.
So maybe could you just walk us through some kind of, even if it's hypothetical examples of maybe a 4 bedroom home, a 6 bedroom home, the type of sticker prices, and the type of rental income, and then also maybe, you know, what sort of kind of lifestyle appeal some of these might have, you know, for someone who's interested in a home that they'll share with friends and family, but also can do really, really well in terms of rental yield when they're not there.
Yeah. So to find a 4 or 5 bedroom plus residence, I would say the sticker price is going to be, if you want a nice house, upwards of 400,000. On up to, I mean, the sky's the limit. You can spend over $1 million on a large property here. You're going to see at least as good a returns as what I was saying before. I mean, you can definitely make a 15% return as long as you've got the right manager and you're booking out the right way. You definitely have to find these niche markets where you're bringing in these groups. But I do have I have a right now 5 friends that are pooling in their money together to buy a residence where they can come down and just kind of have their Jacó Beach tropical residence. They like to surf and they like to fish, and then they'd be able to make some rental income on the side when they're not using it.
And so in terms of finding the right rental manager, what's your advice in terms of, first of all, how to do it, and then I guess how to manage that relationship, and then finally, you know, how to cut that relationship if it stops working? Because, you know, I feel lots of us who've, you know, had, you know, who are invested overseas and who've had multiple overseas rentals, you know, we've seen that these things can ebb and flow in terms of how rental managers perform, how responsive they can be. And, you know, I guess, what are your tips in this regard? And if your tip is just let me manage your property, then...
No, and honestly, I don't do management. I only manage my own property. So I'm not looking to be a property manager. But it's pretty obvious who are the good players in town. We all know who the best rental management companies are. A lot of times, if you're looking at a residence, they'll already be managed by a particular company. And so we can look into what type of numbers that they're already generating. But I have a good pulse on which managers are doing good, which ones are doing bad. Some managers are great at providing the bookings. Other managers are really good at doing maintenance and making sure that the property's in tip-top condition. So it's just a matter of finding a balance of the two. And fortunately, we have a number of good managers in this area that to pick from.
Very good. And in terms of these higher end properties, is there beachfront available? Are you talking about ocean view? How's the kind of the dynamic within the geography of Jacó between the downtown area and then outside?
Got it. So here we have all the above that you mentioned. We have oceanfront residences, we have ocean view, and then so the town of Jacó is kind of flat, and then it goes up to a pretty dramatic hillside in the back of the bay here. And so we have all different types of properties. The most important thing is that it's close to the city center. So something that these groups who can rent, they can easily get to town, to the restaurants, to the shopping amenities. So obviously anything with the view or on the beach is going to be higher price, but your return might be just as good. It could even be better, even if you don't have the view. So we just have to look at the numbers, the operational expenses, and definitely needs to be in close shot to the amenities to make it a good rental.
And so is there sometimes this kind of this conflict that people are drawn towards maybe lifestyle properties command a higher price, even though they won't perform as well in terms of rental income? Maybe they're newer and shinier, whereas maybe the bigger, older units rent better.
Absolutely. You definitely have to look at the operating expenses, because something might appear to be way more attractive, but the numbers might not look as good. And so you got to determine, is this a lifestyle thing, or is this strictly investment? So going back to my little condos that I'm buying for 70,000, those aren't the most attractive units, but the numbers are phenomenal. So it's just, you got to think about it. Is this a lifestyle thing, or is it an investment thing, or is it a mixture of both? Which you can definitely find something that's a mixture of business and pleasure.
Yeah. And how do people, how friendly is the tax regime there in terms of rental income? And is that logistically cumbersome in terms of regulations to comply with?
Yeah, so you have to hire an accountant, and the accountant has to file monthly statements for you. So it's not burdensome as long as you have the right help. And so we can connect you to an accountant to do the right filings every month.
Yeah, because it can be, there are some places that can be tricky to even meet the compliance, because sometimes the rules can be so opaque. I know in Mexico things are pretty clear, but just as you're talking, I'm getting this kind of flash memory of someone, I think it was in the Dominican Republic, whose face almost dropped when I started asking about tax rates. And that it's like, what are you talking about? We don't even know how to fill in the forms. But
yeah. So there's a hotel tax that is a 13% tax. It usually is covered by the renter. And then it's just a matter of having an accountant file this on a monthly basis. And then your income taxes have to be filed at the end of the year, which is a percentage, obviously, of your earnings. You can definitely write off a lot of expenses, reasonable travel expenses. You can write off, you can depreciate the asset. So you're not going to be paying a whole lot of taxes in Costa Rica.
Any other words of wisdom for anyone planning to visit Jacó in the coming months?
If you're coming to Costa Rica, please reach out to me. I can send you a couple of things that I put together. I put together kind of a welcome guide to Costa Rica to tell you how to get here. Once you get here, where to eat, where to shop, things to do, etc. Also, I put together a buyer's guide, and that kind of will walk you through the process from start to finish, and also discusses ownership in Costa Rica as a foreigner. So I'd be able to send you those documents if you want to reach out.
I mean, I think it just speaks to just the opportunity that we have today, in Jacó, in Costa Rica, and more broadly on these kind of internationalized places and beach towns on our beat. We can just buy cheap, and even by renting for modest nightly rates, generate these yields that, I mean, you say these yields to your real estate buddies in LA, and they'll think it's all BS. It's just unbelievable, but it's there, and real people like you are doing it.